I think our response has been quite pathetic, from our failure to prescribe the IRGC, which a number of us have been calling for several years, right through to our failure to back Israel and the United States in this particular conflict. I think it's sad to see Britain so sidelined, and I think it's we have to consider where that leaves Britain's reputation and influence.
President Trump has ambitious goals for military intervention in Iran, an end to its nuclear program, strict controls on its missiles, no more backing for its Houthi, Hamas or Hezbollah proxies, regime change, all to happen quickly with a short, sharp military operation which involves no boots on the ground. Is that realistic? Let's speak to Liam Fox, former Tory Defence Secretary. Liam Fox, do you support the US and Israeli attacks on Iran?
In principle, yes. I mean, our question is always about timing. Is it the best timing? Have we sufficient knowledge about what's happening inside Iran to be able to ensure that there is a change of regime without the sort of Western intervention that you mentioned? But in principle, it's clear that the primary duty of our government, of the British government, is to defend the United Kingdom, its people and its interests. Iran is the enemy of the UK and our allies in the region. They have launched terrorist attacks against our allies before. They have vowed to wipe Israel, another ally, off the map completely, which of course is behind Israel's huge concern about Iran ever getting a nuclear weapon. So I think in principle there's not a problem. And I'm afraid that at a time that we do require leadership with some backbone, we have been landed with the most invertebrate government possible in the United Kingdom.
Well, I'll come on to that. But from what you said, are you therefore, does it therefore follow that you think Britain should be part of the attack?
Well, we should certainly have been willing to allow the United States the use of our bases from the outset.
I'll come to that, but should we be part of the attack?
Well, I think that now that we have been directly attacked by probably drones launched from Lebanon, I would guess, rather than Iran itself, although that's possible, it's very clear that we are the targets. We are being brought in as targets because we are allies of the United States and Israel. I think that whether that's in politics or in law, it's absolutely clear that we are part of that conflict. And I think we should be, although it's an American and Israeli-led mission, we should be asking them what they want of the United Kingdom to help carry that mission out successfully and as quickly as possible.
But what possible assets could we now bring to the conflict?
Well, we have got a lot of intelligence assets. I think we've been sending F-35s forward to Cyprus. Let's be very frank, this is really about, with a massive American military buildup, we may not be bringing or able to bring very much to the party, but we can allow the United States greater flexibility. We should be doing what we can to ensure a successful outcome of this conflict, whether or not we thought that the timing was correct.
You don't think we're already sharing intelligence? We surely we are. We always do.
We will be, but now we've got some clarity after another U-turn on American use of British bases. There should never have been any question about that.
But one drone attacking a base in Cyprus, which we don't think it really did any much damage, if any damage at all, is that a basis for war?
Well, we have got...
we don't even know who sent the drone.
Well, we'll be able to tell who made it. It'll almost certainly be Iranian-made Shahed drone. And even if it wasn't launched from Iran and it was launched by their proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, that amounts to the same thing. And I understand that a further two have been intercepted on their way to target Cyprus. It's very clear that what's left of the regime is going to lash out. For them, this is an existential battle now. They will not be too concerned about who they bring into it. I think the risk they run is that they're bringing they're creating an Arab anti-Iranian alliance, which may not have existed to this strength before, and it may have the opposite effect to that which they want. It's clear that the regime's still functioning, although it's unclear how deep that regime is. And I think that there's one very important message that the world should be sending out now, and that's to the other forces, apart from the IRGC, the Quds Force, and the Basij, which is the separate paramilitary militia, that they now need to make a choice whose side they're on. Are they on the side of a dead or dying theocratic tyranny, or are they on the sides of the Iranian people, and that they will be held accountable by the international community for the decisions they take in the coming hours and days.
Well, President Trump's already said that to them twice in his two statements. Coming back to our own country, how would you characterise the UK response to what, by any standards, is an event of historic proportions?
It's been very clear, I think, for some time that we were eventually going to have to confront the danger of Iran, not just what it does to its own citizens. And we've seen in just the early months of 2026, possibly tens of thousands of its own citizens being murdered by the state, the export of terrorism through Hezbollah.
But I asked you about
Hamas.
the UK response to all this.
And
how would
so
you characterise it?
I think our response has been quite pathetic, from our failure to prescribe the IRGC, which a number of us have been calling for several years, right through to our failure to back Israel and the United States in this particular conflict. I think it's sad to see Britain so sidelined, and I think it's we have to consider where that leaves Britain's reputation and influence in the future.
But people remember 2003, when we went to war with America, side by side with them, and we saw the movie, and it didn't end well. Iraq was weapons of mass destruction. So is this. Iraq was about regime change. So is this. But in the end, about 1 million people probably died, and it wasn't exactly a time to cover ourselves in glory. It's understandable, is it not? People are reluctant to repeat that.
Well, first of all, as it turned out, we did not have a sufficient basis to know that Iraq was creating weapons of mass destruction. I won't go into the history of that. The Iranians, we know, they have announced that they're trying to make a nuclear weapon. We know from the negotiations they had before, they're enriching uranium, and we know that they've said they would plan to wipe Israel off the map, or at least hardline elements would do that, so that is not comparable. We know that the people in Iran...
President Trump said he had obliterated the nuclear facilities of Iran last June.
Yeah, and many of us didn't believe that that was possible given the scale of the strikes. And that's shown to be correct. And in fact, a lot of American intelligence suggested that there hadn't been the degree of damage to Iran's nuclear facilities that were being claimed politically. We also know in Iran that there is a huge potential uprising of its people. Tens of thousands being murdered by the state because they simply want the same freedoms that we take for granted. We know that they had tried to destabilize neighbors like Bahrain. We know that they had, through their proxies, and with the Houthis, for example, thrown rockets into Saudi Arabia. This is a regime that wanted not just dominance politically, but believed that it should be the leaders of Islam, not just Shia Islam, in the region. That was incompatible with peace in the longer term. It's been confronted as it was always going to be.
But nobody in the Gulf region has freedoms that we take for granted. Nobody. They're all dictatorships. Why would Iran be very different? Especially since, even when Mr. Trump intervened in Venezuela, it wasn't to replace a dictatorship with a democracy. It was to continue with a different, preferred dictatorship. Why not the same in Tehran?
And I think this is primarily about regime change to diminish security risk. I don't think in the minds of the Americans this is about a war of liberation, but I do think that it is a very important point that we need to consider. And when we see groups like the MEK under Mariam Rajavi re-emphasizing the 10-point plan that they have had before, which is a roadmap that sets out a pluralistic, open Iran with freedom of speech, freedom of politics, freedom of religion, we can see that there is a very different picture here. There's a whole generation who have lived under not just the dictatorship, but a theocratic tyranny that denies people all rights of religious views. You do not get that in the UAE, where you've got the Abraham Accord Center, or Bahrain, where you've got a long tradition of tolerance of both Jewish and Christian religions. Iran
not so much the Shias in Bahrain, which is a real issue. There's a Sunni minority government in Bahrain, and the Shias have not been well treated on this. But I've just, it just seems to me that Can any of this really be achieved from the air alone? Because I think we both agreed there won't be boots on the ground.
Well, that, of course, is the point. And I think that where we don't know the strength of the internal resistance in Iran, there is undoubtedly an element of risk that the population in Iran are not able to rise up and overpower what is left of the regime. Were they to do so, of course, the prize for the rest of the world is absolutely enormous. So,
I understand
like you and like
that.
everyone else, Andrew, we are watching with some considerable anxiety.
Well, it's going to start hurting soon, isn't it? We just learned this morning that Qatar Energy has stopped producing LNG. Oil prices are rising. Gas prices are now rising. After the Ukraine war, Europe stopped taking its gas from Russia, started taking it from, where do you think? Qatar. America too, but a lot from Qatar. This is going to hurt people in their pocketbooks quite soon, is it not?
It will depend, the degree to which there is economic pain will depend on the length of time that the conflict goes on. It's impossible to say what the scale of either of those will be at the present time. But what is clear is that having gone this far, it is now necessary to remove the missile threat, the drone threat that the IRGC are able to provide, because having half a revolution is worse than none.
I understand that. Final quick question for you, Liam Fox. How do you assess the danger of IRGC sleeper cells in the UK and their allies and their ability to mount terrorist attacks on us?
That's impossible for me to say because I don't have the intelligence, but I do think that we need to take the threat of that much more seriously than we have. As I said earlier, a number of us have been trying to have groups like the IRGC proscribed in the UK, and for reasons that I've never understood, we have taken a far too lenient line against some of these groups, these pro-Iranian groups, than we've been willing to take against, for example, pro-Sunni groups. I think that there are questions about why we've had this posture, but it needs to end, and it needs to end not just now, it actually needed to end 5 to 10 years ago.
Liam Fox, thank you. Thank you for joining me on Times Radio today.